friends, thanks for joining me again. And today I have a really big, really exciting video for you. Thank you for following along this whole house buying series. And today I have a video that could literally save people tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, seriously, this is huge. I've put out lots of money saving videos in the past. You know, different ways that you could save money on your utilities, different ways that you can save money on your groceries, and just various other ways. But never have I ever put out a video saving people tens of thousands of dollars, or depending on what kind of a housing market you have in your area, it could literally come up to 100,000 or more. So please approach this information with an open mind. We're just going to crunch the numbers and go through the different scenarios and show what would help people get to their various goals and things like that. The idea behind this video is not to prove that one side or the other is any better than the other. It's not to point the 15-year mortgages are better than 30 or that 30 are better than 15, just to show what the different scenarios look like and then help people make a more informed decision so that people can better help make the goals that they have set in their lives. So today's video, 30 or 15-year mortgage, which is better? And this video is going to have three main points. The first is going to be the 5 main differences between a 15-year and a 30-year mortgage. The second is a snapshot of what that looks like if a person were to move in 5 years. And then the last one is because there is a lot of debate in the financial, among the financial gurus and different people who follow them as to whether or not it's better to get a 15 or a 30. And many people say, well, if you don't want the drawbacks of a 15-year, just get a 30-year and then make extra payments, and then it ends up being exactly the same as a 15-year. So we're going to test that and see if it really holds water. Does it really make it the same thing? And what does it actually work out to in the end? So here we go. The 5 main differences and explaining 15 and 30-year mortgages. So the difference number 1 is the term length, obviously. The idea is that when you borrow money for a house, the length of time of a mortgage that you get determines how long it's going to take to pay off the mortgage. So say you move into a house, you put a 15-year mortgage on that house. That means you've paid back all the money that you borrowed for that house from the bank in 15 years. A 30-year mortgage means you're going to pay back all that money that you borrowed for the house in 30 years. So that's difference number 1. Difference number 2 is the interest rate. This is often overlooked, I think, among the financial gurus, but I think it's really important to point out. Right now, and I mean this is fresh off the presses, I went and looked up the most current interest rates that I could at the time when I'm posting this video. In my area, of course, it could change in different areas. But the interest rate for a fixed rate 15-year mortgage with no points is 2.84%. The interest rate for a 30-year mortgage is 3.56%. So as you can see, for a 15-year mortgage, the interest rate is quite a bit lower. So that is definitely important to take into consideration when making your decision. The next difference number 3, is the payments that you're going to have to make. As you can imagine, with having to pay off all the money that you've borrowed from the bank in 15 years, the payment is going to be a little bit higher with the 15-year mortgage, which is probably the number 1 reason why people choose a 30-year mortgage instead, just to have the ease of those lower payments. So if we were to take out, say, a $200,000 loan, which is the, facetious situation we're going to use for this whole video, the payments for a 15-year mortgage is going to be $1,365, and I'm just going to round everything down. I'm just going to ignore all the cents on all these just to make it so I don't boggle everyone's minds with all the numbers. So $1,365 would be the payment for that, and for a 30-year mortgage, $904. Obviously quite a bit lower. So that's number 3. The payments are definitely a lot different, so that's another thing to really consider when choosing the two. Difference number 4 between a 15 and 30 year is the amortization schedule. The amortization schedule is basically what the bank says that they're going to do with your money. So if your payment for a 15-year mortgage, actually let's go with a 30 really quick. If your payment was $904.80, that means that they're going to take $593.33 and take that and apply it to the interest that you owe on that mortgage. They're going to take $311.47 and apply that to the principal, meaning buying down the amount of debt that you have and put that toward paying back that money. Does that make sense? That is the amortization schedule. The amortization schedule is drastically different with a 30 or a 15-year from the 30. That means the interest is $473 which is quite a bit lower than $593. Obviously, that's about $120. So you'll waste $120 less on paying interest to the bank, because that really doesn't benefit us. That's just giving money to the bank for having been so nice to loan us that money. And then principal is $892.50. A lot more money with a 15-year mortgage goes toward paying down that principal. So $311, $892, not exactly, but roughly 3 times as much of the money that you pay on your mortgage payment goes toward buying down your debt and toward your principal. So while that payment is higher, a lot more of it is going toward buying down your debt and paying down that principal. So that is difference number 4, the very drastically different amortization schedule. And then finally, difference number 5 is the total amount that you're going to pay for the house. Now this rarely happens. Rarely do people buy a house with a 30-year mortgage and they just live in it for 30 years. They never refinance or do anything. They just make their regular payments of $904 every single month for 30 years. But let's just look at it really quickly for the facetious situation of it. So if you were to do that, if you were to get these mortgages and just live in the house and pay it until you actually get the house paid off, the total amount that you would pay for a 30-year mortgage, now remember we borrowed $200,000 to buy this house, $325,729. That's a lot of money that you had to pay to the bank. For the 15-year mortgage, it's $245,848. Very drastically different. So as you can see, the total interest that you would pay with a 30-year mortgage would be $125,000, a little over, obviously, and then with a 15-year mortgage, it's $45,000, almost $46,000. Very, very, very drastically different. You pay a whole lot less interest with the 15-year mortgage than you do with the 30-year. And again, that's for 2 reasons. It's because of the difference number 2, the different interest rates, because we're paying less interest, and then difference number 4, with more of the money with the amortization schedule going toward buying down your debts. So there you go. There's a pretty good foundation on the main differences between a 30 and 15-year mortgage. Let's go on to the next section of it, and then we'll just take a snapshot of what that looks like, again using the same facetious numbers if you were to move out in 5 years. So if you were to move out of this house after having borrowed $200,000 with a 15-year mortgage, you would still owe $142,534, and with a 30-year you would owe $179,587. So as you can see, you've bought down a lot more of your debt with the 15 than you did with the 30. The total amount that you would have paid in mortgage payments, that's going to be $81,949 with the 15-year and $54,288 with the 30-year. So obviously you paid a lot less money in mortgage payments, obviously, because the mortgage payment was lower. The difference is $27,661. So with the 15-year mortgage, you paid $27,661 more dollars. But because of the equity, because of how much more we paid down, we actually made in equity $57,465. $57,000 with the 15-year and $20,421 with the 30-year. So which would you rather? If you were to buy a house and you were to move out in 5 years, which would you rather the bank give you a check for when you sell your house? $57,000 to go shop for your new house, or $20,000? So I would like to point out really quickly that that is a difference of $37,044. So you paid $27,000 more dollars on your mortgage payments, but you built up $37,000 more equity in your house. You see what I'm saying? Your money went a lot further with a 15-year than the 30. But again, you know, it really makes a big difference on how much you can afford each month and different things like that. I don't want anybody to be getting the idea that I'm trying to promote one over the other. I'm just crunching the numbers so you know what it actually looks like, and we'll talk about more about that in a minute. Okay, lastly, we're going to talk about whether or not paying extra payments on a 30-year makes sense, or if it makes a 30-year basically into the same thing as a 15-year. Because that's one of the ways that you can help buy down your debt and basically make it to where you don't owe as much money. Alright, so here we have decision-making Dan and Molly. Dan and Molly want to spend $2,000 a month on their housing costs. They borrowed that $200,000 and they know that they can afford $2,000. Well, that's obviously quite a bit more than the 15-year and a lot more than the 30-year mortgage payments, but they're worried. They're like, what if one of us loses our job? What if there's, you know, who knows, one of them gets sick or something like that? Should they take the easy route and choose the lower payment just in case something happens? Or do they want to go with the 15-year because they have a goal that they want to buy this house and they want to buy down their debt as fast as they can, because the ultimate goal is to own this house in full. They don't want any debt on it. They just want to own it. So let's crunch the numbers and see how it plays out for them depending on which scenarios that they choose. Okay, so the extra that they would be devoting to their mortgage, if they wanted to spend a total of $2,000 a month, they're going to add $634 to their 15-year or $1,095 to their 30-year. The total amount that they would pay until they paid off this house, say they just bought the house and they paid these payments until it was totally paid off, the total amount that they would pay according to the different interest rates, and remember the amortization schedules are different, the total amount that they would pay would end up being $228,493 on the 15-year and $237,609. A difference of having the house paid off in full in 9 years and 5 months with the 15-year and 9 years and 11 months with the 30-year. So as you can see, paying the same exact payment on a 30-year actually takes 6 months longer to pay off the house than it does if they would have gotten the 15-year. So that's something definitely to consider. A lot of people think, oh, well, you know, just get the 30-year because it's easier, what if, you know, we don't want to get ourselves into a house and then end up foreclosing on it. And so this is just a decision you'll have to make. You know, it really depends on how much you borrow. This is all the facetious situation. Every situation is unique, you know, so it really just depends. But I just wanted to point that out. The total amount that they saved on these mortgages, $17,355 by making those extra payments. Making those extra payments definitely helped buy down their debt on a 15-year, but they saved $88,121 with their 30-year mortgage. That savings is huge. That is a lot of money that they saved on their 30-year mortgage. And it's because the 30-year, again, was designed so that you would pay it off over the course of 30 years. So shortening their mortgage by 20 years and 1 month by making those payments is really huge. It is really huge. So I do want to say that anybody who has a mortgage out there, if you can make extra payments, it's definitely going to help you in the long run to buy down your debt, and it changes the amortization schedule. But I think we might have to put that in a different video because otherwise this one is going to get too long. Okay, a quick snapshot of what it looks like after 5 years. Say they bought this house with the intention of living here until it was paid off, but then they ended up having some kids, the house ended up being too small, and so while they were making these really drastically high payments to try to pay it down, what does that look like in 5 years? Well, that means that their balance would have been $101,712 for the 15-year mortgage and $107,784 for the 15-year. So both ways, they've almost cut this balance in half in just 5 years. So the amount of equity that they have built up in their house was really high. And that's because the most amount of interest that we pay is actually in the beginning of our mortgage, not toward the end, because there's this huge balance of money that you owe and you're paying interest on all of that money. So if you can make extra payments toward your mortgage, it's actually more important to do so in the beginning, although it's beneficial at any point during the mortgage. And then the last thing I want to point out is that the average amount of interest paid, because I realize that if somebody is watching this and they're like, oh my gosh, you know, look at all this interest, $125,000 in interest and $45,000 in interest. There's a reason why I'm actually putting out this video after the last video I put out last week as to whether or not you should buy a house in cash or you should finance it. Because I realize these numbers can be a little bit scary. And a lot of people in the financial realm like to say that there's a right or a wrong way to do things, and I personally never agree with that, almost never, because I honestly don't believe there's a cookie cutter method that works for anyone. If, you know, buying a house with a mortgage is the only right way, then there are a lot of people out there who are buying houses in cash, you know, when they're buying something untraditional or they're buying in a housing market where houses aren't as expensive. I honestly believe that that's right. I don't think there's anything wrong with buying a house in cash if you have the right situation and scenario for that to happen. But again, I don't honestly think that buying a house in cash is the only right way to do it, because I don't believe that this is a bad way to do it either. And let me point out why. The total amount of interest paid per month, going back to if you were to just live in the house, get a 15-year, and just make nothing but your normal payments, so, this doesn't have anything to do with decision-making Dan and Molly. The average amount of interest paid per month for a 15-year mortgage is $254. And the average amount of interest that you would pay per month on a 30-year mortgage is $349. If a person is living in a rental house, saving money to try to buy a house in cash, then say their rent was $650 or $700. I mean, around here that's unheard of. You can't buy, you can't rent a cardboard box in the ghetto for that price. But I'm just saying, even in a better market, a really, really good case scenario, really cheap rent that they were spending to try to save money to buy this house in cash, well, honestly, they're throwing away more of their money on rent than they would be, buying their house in any scenario, whether they were buying it with a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. $349 average, interest paid is substantially lower than the rent that they're paying. I don't actually believe that renting is throwing away your money. I really do believe that there are scenarios where, renting is actually a good choice for a lot of people, but that's another story. I'm just saying, for those who want to say, look at all this interest you're paying, you're better off paying in cash, I don't believe that. Again, there are times and instances where that's a good choice, but I also believe that financing a house is a good choice as well. Neither one is a bad decision. I honestly think both scenarios are good decisions. So hopefully this helped you. The 5 different ways that, a 30-year is different than a 15-year. What it would actually look like if you were to buy this house and sell it in 5 years. Say you were trying to buy a house that was a starter house and then you wanted to move on later on and buy something a little bigger, say you wanted to start a family or whatever. Or if your decision is you want to try to pay off your house as fast as you can, does paying extra payments on a 30-year mortgage, equal the same thing as having a 15-year mortgage? Again, it doesn't make it the same, but it does make it a whole lot better. So, I just wanted to crunch these numbers for everyone so that you can be armed with the information that you need to make the best decision that you can, so that you can, achieve your goals as best as you can. So hopefully this information was helpful to you. Hopefully I didn't boggle your minds too much with all these numbers. I'm Frugal Green Girl. We'll see you next time.